Hello, third grade, and welcome to lesson 13-7. We're going to be talking about whole numbers and fractions. Let's go ahead and get started with our lesson, and then we'll get into our notes and guided practice together in just a moment.
How can you use fraction names to represent whole numbers? Think about this question during the lesson. What are some equivalent fraction names for 1, 2, and 3?
Let's find out.
How many wholes does the number line show? Each whole is divided into how many parts? The number line shows 3 wholes. Each whole is divided into 1 equal part. You can write a whole number as a fraction by writing the whole number as the numerator and 1 as the denominator. 1 whole divided into 1 equal part can be written as 1 over 1. 2 wholes, each divided into 1 equal part, can be written as 2 over 1. 3 wholes, each divided into 1 equal part, can be written as 3 over 1. There are many fraction names for whole numbers. What is another fraction name for 1?
Select your answer.
You can find other equivalent fraction names for whole numbers. Is there a pattern for finding equivalent fraction names for a whole number? Explain. Yes, write the whole number as the numerator and 1 as the denominator to find an equivalent fraction name. To find others, multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Now you know how you can use fraction names to represent whole numbers.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into our notes and our guided practice. And we'll talk some more about naming wholes using their fraction names. So you can write a whole number as a fraction by writing the whole number as the numerator and 1 as the denominator. Now, we know that 1 whole can also be written as anytime you have the same number in the numerator and the denominator, that equals 1 whole. So 1 over 1, or 2 halves, or 4 fourths, those all name 1 whole. It shows you that you have all the number of pieces that you need to make your whole. Those two numbers are the same. Now, if, for example, we want to show 2 whole, you have twice as much on top as you do on the bottom. So 2 of my 1 size pieces, 4 of my 2 size pieces, 8 of my 4th size pieces. Next, let's take a look at an example. It says Jamie's family ate 12 pieces of apple pie during the week. Each piece was 1/6 of the pie. How many whole pies did Jamie's family eat? What fraction of a pie was left over? Explain how you decided. So first I need to stop and think. They ate 12 pieces of pie. Now I know that each pie is 6 equal parts. I know this because each piece is 1/6 of the pie. So the whole pie is going to be 6/6. So I need to figure out how many groups of 6 there are in 12. That way I can figure out how many pies they ate and how much is left over. Now I know from my basic facts that 6 times 2 is 12. So there are 2 groups of 6 and 12, which means there are 2 whole pies that they ate. and there are no pieces left over. Next, let's take a look at another example. Write two equivalent fractions for each whole number. So if I have 4 as my whole number, I need to write it in fraction form. So I could do 4 over 1, or I could do 8 over 2. Now, this tells us that the 4 whole is the same as 8 half-size pieces. So think if you have apples, you have 4 apples that you cut in half. Now you have 8 of your 1/2 size pieces. You put them back together, you still end up with 4 whole apple sizes. So if you have one of these, you want to look at these fractions and think, if a whole is 2 parts, how many groups of 2 wholes, how many groups of 2s go into 8? So I know 2 times 4 equals 8. So there's 4 groups of 2 and 8. That makes this 4 whole. How many groups of 1 are there in 4? 1 times 4 is 4. So there's 4 whole here as well. For the next one, I have 9/3 is equal to 12/4 is equal to something over something. So if I have 9 of my 1/3 size pieces, that's going to give me 3 whole, because each group of 3 is a whole. And I know that there's 3 groups of 3 in 9. Now they gave me 4/12. How many groups of 4 do I have in 12? 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12. So 3 whole is the same thing as saying 12/4 or saying 9/3. That's the same thing as saying 3 over 1. There's 3 of my 1 whole size pieces. Now, when we have a fraction with a numerator that is larger than the denominator, that tells us right away that it's more than 1 whole. Notice all of these are equal to more than 1 whole because the numerator is greater than the denominator. That means you have more pieces than you need to make just the 1 whole. Now, for our next example, we want to figure out how many wholes are in 8/4. So I need to think, how many groups of 4 are there in 8? Remember, your denominator tells you how many pieces make up 1 whole. So I only need 4 pieces to make 1 whole, but I actually have 8 pieces. So 1 whole is 4/4. That tells me that 8/4 is the same thing as saying 4/4 plus another 4/4 or 2 whole. There are 2 groups of 4 and 8. Now remember, to show just 1 whole in fraction form, your numerator and your denominator have to be the same number. So 4/4, 2 halves, 8/8, 6/6, and so on. Now let's take a look at our guided practice. Number 1 says, explain how you know that 4 over 1 is equal to 4. I know this because it shows me that I have 4 wholes that are divided into 1 equal part. So that means I have 4 altogether. For number 2, it says complete the number line. So we were filling in the numbers and the equivalent fractions here. We know that our number line was broken up into 6. So I counted on from 6. 1 6, 2 6, 3 6, 4 6, 5 6. 6 6 is 1/3. Or sorry, 6 6 is 1 whole, which is equivalent to 3/3. 7 6, 8 6, 9 6, 10 6, 11 6, and then 12 6 is equivalent to 2 whole because there's 2 groups of 6 to make up 12. Now we know 2 6 and 1/3 are equivalent fraction. So 4 6 and 2/3 are equivalent fraction. 6 6 and 3/3 are equivalent fractions. 8 6 and 4/3 are equivalent fractions. 10 6 and 5/3 are equivalent fractions. 12 6 and 6/3 are equivalent fractions. Now pay attention to how we moved from one of these numbers to the other. 1/3 and 2 6. Here, how do I go from a denominator of 3 to a denominator of 6? I know 3 times 2 will get me to 6. So if I did that to my denominators, I have to do it to my numerators. 1 times 2 will give me 2. So these are equivalent. Same rule applies here. To go from 3 to 6, we did times 2. We had to do the same thing for our numerator. 2 times 2 gave us the 4. Here, same thing. 3/3, how do we turn it into 6 6? multiply your numerator and denominator times 2. Now remember, multiplication and division are inverse operations. So instead of going from the small one to the fraction with the smaller denominator to the fraction with the larger denominator, I can go the other way around. How do I get from 6 to 3 using division? 6 divided by 2 equals 3. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. You can work it that way as well. And for number 3, we are writing out equivalent fractions. 1 whole is equal to 3/3 is equal to 6/6. 2 is equal to 6/3 or 12/6. And the way we know this is that our denominator tells us how many we have in 1 whole, and our numerator tells us how many pieces we have. So if I only need a group of 3 to make 1 whole, here I have 2 groups of 3. So that means I have 2 whole, and so on. Okay, that takes us to the end of this lesson. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.